You think black moms in the 1970s could only afford turkey and stuffing? Think again. These women turned pennies into feasts that fed 20 people with dignity and flavors nobody forgot. Here are 30 cheap 1970s Thanksgiving dinners that proved abundance came from creativity. Neckbone gravy over rice became the foundation when turkey was beyond reach, transforming the cheapest cuts into liquid gold that satisfied entire families. Black mothers would simmer pork or beef neck bones for hours with onions, garlic, and bay leaves until the meat felt tender and the broth turned rich. The bones cost pennies per pound at butcher shops, yet held marrow that created gravy with body and soul. Women knew that patience turned scarcity into abundance, letting those bones bubble on back burners from morning until afternoon. The finished gravy was thick, savory, and packed with protein from the shredded meat. Poured generously over white rice, this combination stretched to feed 20 people when turkey could barely serve 8. Children sopped up every drop with cornbread, while adults appreciated how resourcefulness created satisfaction without shame. Neckbone gravy wasn't poverty food, but proof that love and skill mattered more than money. Chitlin dressing appeared on tables when traditional stuffing felt too expensive, turning what others discarded into something deeply satisfying. Cleaned thoroughly over hours, chitlins were chopped fine and mixed with cornbread crumbles, celery, onions, sage, and chicken broth stretched as far as possible. The mixture baked until golden on top while staying moist inside, creating dressing that carried intense flavor and connected families to ancestral cooking traditions. Black mothers prepared chitlins as acts of both economy and heritage, knowing their grandmothers had done the same during harder times. The smell was unmistakable, but for those raised with it, chitlin dressing meant Thanksgiving in ways plain bread stuffing never could. A single batch cost less than $3, yet fed the entire gathering. Young people might have initially resisted, but after that first bite, most came back for seconds. Chitlin dressing taught lessons about respecting traditions. Candied yams made with margarine instead of butter became the holiday staple that delivered sweetness without breaking the budget, transforming humble sweet potatoes into something luxurious. Black mothers would buy sweet potatoes in bulk when on sale, often 5 pounds for under $1, then slice them thick into baking dishes. Margarine, significantly cheaper than butter, was melted with brown sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg to create syrup that caramelized beautifully. Some added vanilla extract or orange juice when affordable, but the core remained simple. The yams baked slowly until softened, and the edges turned sticky with crystallized sugar, creating perfect balance between savory and sweet. Children fought over corner pieces where syrup had thickened into candy-like consistency, while adults appreciated how this dish required minimal ingredients yet delivered satisfaction. Candied yams represented the ability to create holiday magic from basic pantry staples. Collard greens cooked with smoked turkey tails instead of ham hocks provided the traditional side dish at a fraction of the cost, turning a bag of greens into nourishment that carried flavor and cultural meaning. Turkey tails, often overlooked and heavily discounted at butcher counters, contained enough fat and smokiness to season an entire pot for under $2. Black mothers would buy 3 or 4 pounds of fresh collards from produce stands where vegetables stayed affordable. The greens were washed repeatedly until no grit remained, then chopped and added to pots where turkey tails had been simmering with onions and vinegar. Hours of slow cooking broke down the greens until they turned silky, while potlikker became broth so flavorful that people sipped it from cups. This wasn't just a side dish, but vitamin-rich vegetables that provided essential nutrients. Families served collards alongside everything else, understanding that greens represented prosperity. Macaroni and cheese made from scratch with government cheese became the creamy casserole that turned welfare assistance into something families served with pride. Government commodity cheese, distributed through assistance programs, came in large blocks that creative mothers transformed into dishes that tasted better than store-bought. The cheese had unique texture and sharp flavor that melted beautifully when combined with evaporated milk, eggs, and elbow macaroni bought in bulk. Women layered the mixture in large baking dishes, topping it with extra cheese and sometimes breadcrumbs, then baked until golden and bubbling. The result was dense, creamy mac and cheese that could feed 20 people with just 2 boxes of pasta and 1 block of government cheese. Children loved it because the cheese pulled into strings with each serving. This wasn't bland, watery mac and cheese from boxes, but rich custard-like casserole that required skill to perfect. Black mothers took pride in their mac and cheese recipes. String beans canned in bulk and seasoned with bacon drippings provided the vegetable side that stretched pennies into portions for crowds, proving preserved vegetables could taste homemade. Black mothers bought cases of canned green beans when on sale, often paying less than 30 cents per can, then transformed them by draining the packing liquid and cooking them down with saved bacon grease. The bacon drippings, carefully stored from breakfast preparations throughout the year, added smoky richness that made even plain canned vegetables taste slow-cooked. Onions sautéed in the drippings first created a flavor base, then the drained beans went into simmer until they softened and absorbed all that porky goodness. Some women added a pinch of sugar to balance saltiness, while others threw in a ham hock if available. The beans weren't crisp tender but cooked until completely soft, the way older generations preferred vegetables. Children usually won over by these bacon-flavored beans. Cornbread dressing, made from dried-out bread and day-old cornbread, turned stale leftovers into the savory stuffing that anchored Thanksgiving plates throughout Black communities. Mothers saved bread ends, biscuit pieces, and cornbread scraps in bags for weeks before the holiday, letting them air dry until rock hard so they'd absorb maximum liquid without turning mushy. On Thanksgiving morning, those saved breads would be crumbled and mixed with sautéed celery, onions, and sage, then moistened with chicken broth made from boiling backs and necks. Some women added finely chopped giblets, while others relied purely on vegetables and herbs for flavor. The dressing had to be moist enough to hold together but dry enough to crisp on top when baked. This wasn't bread cubes from expensive store-bought loaves, but carefully accumulated scraps transformed through skill. The golden brown top provided textural contrast to soft interior. For Black families, cornbread dressing represented resourcefulness, elevated to tradition. Potato salad stretched with extra eggs and mayonnaise became the cold side dish that fed crowds for minimal cost, transforming basic potatoes into creamy satisfaction. Black mothers boiled potatoes by the 5-pound bag, timing them carefully so they'd be firm enough to dice without turning to mush, then combined them with hard-boiled eggs that provided protein. The ratio was crucial. Enough eggs to make the salad filling, but not so many that it tasted only of eggs, with mayonnaise binding everything together. Mustard added tang, while finely diced celery and onions provided crunch and flavor dimension. The true economical genius came from using potatoes as filler, allowing a single dozen eggs to feed 20 people when stretched with enough starch. Some families added sweet pickle relish for both flavor and the satisfaction of having extras in their salad. The salad chilled overnight, making it perfect for gatherings where oven space was limited and make-ahead dishes were essential. Chicken quarters baked instead of turkey gave families affordable poultry that still felt special, allowing Black mothers to serve bird on Thanksgiving without spending $20 on turkey. Leg quarters sold for less than 50 cents per pound in the 1970s, and when bought in bulk bags, they became even more economical. Mothers seasoned them heavily with paprika, garlic powder, black pepper, and whatever herbs the cabinet held, then baked them slowly until the skin crisped golden and the meat stayed tender. The dark meat remained moist, even with extended cooking, making them more forgiving than turkey breast. A 10-pound bag of chicken quarters could feed 20 people when accompanied by generous sides. The drippings collected in baking pans became bases for gravy, ensuring nothing went to waste. Children actually preferred chicken to turkey because it was familiar and easier to eat. Baked chicken quarters taught families that tradition could be adapted. Sweet potato pie, made from scratch with lard crust, became the dessert that delivered holiday sweetness without requiring expensive ingredients, turning humble root vegetables into celebration. Black mothers baked their own sweet potatoes until soft, then mashed them with evaporated milk, eggs, sugar, and warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla when affordable. The filling was rich, smooth, and naturally sweet, requiring less added sugar than other desserts, making it economical and delicious. Pie crusts made with lard rather than butter saved money while producing flaky, tender pastry. Some women topped their pies with meringue made from leftover egg whites, creating impressive height without additional cost, while others left them plain. A single pie cost less than $2 in ingredients, yet could be sliced into 12 portions, making it far more economical than cakes. The pies were often baked the day before Thanksgiving. Pinto beans, slow-cooked with ham bone scraps, provided protein-rich side dishes that cost almost nothing, yet fed crowds with stick-to-your-ribs satisfaction. Black mothers would soak dried beans overnight, then simmer them all day with ham bones scavenged from previous meals, creating broth that was rich with smoky, meaty flavor. The beans themselves cost less than 50 cents for a 2-pound bag that swelled to feed 20 people when cooked with onions, garlic, and bay leaves. This wasn't quick cooking, but all-day simmering that transformed hard-dried beans into creamy, tender morsels swimming in thick, flavorful liquid. Some women added a pinch of sugar to balance saltiness, while others let the ham bone provide all seasoning needed. Children might have initially resisted beans, but when served alongside cornbread for sopping up potlikker, even picky eaters cleaned their plates. Pinto beans represented economic wisdom passed down through generations. Fried chicken wings bought in bulk became the affordable alternative to whole birds, giving families the crispy, golden poultry that made Thanksgiving feel festive without emptying wallets. Chicken wings sold for 30 cents per pound in the 1970s, making them one of the most economical cuts available, especially when purchased in 10-pound bags from discount grocers. Black mothers would season them overnight with paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper, then fry them in batches until the skin shattered with each bite. The meat stayed juicy, while the coating turned crispy and flavorful, creating that perfect contrast that made fried chicken legendary in Black cooking traditions. Unlike turkey or whole chickens, wings fried quickly and could be prepared by multiple cooks simultaneously, making them practical for large gatherings. Children loved eating with their hands, while adults appreciated how wings stretched the poultry budget without sacrificing flavor. Giblet gravy made from turkey or chicken organ meats transformed parts that many discarded into rich, flavorful sauce that elevated every dish it touched. When families could afford even a small bird, Black mothers saved the neck, liver, heart, and gizzard, chopping them fine and simmering them with onions and celery until tender. The organs added depth and richness that plain flour gravy could never match, creating sauce with body and complexity that tasted like hours of work. Some women strained out the meat pieces for texture-sensitive children, while others left everything in for those who appreciated authentic preparations. The gravy was thickened with flour mixed into the drippings, creating perfect consistency that coated everything without being gluey. Poured over dressing, mashed potatoes, rice, or biscuits, Giblet gravy made every component taste richer. This was resourceful cooking at its finest, using parts that cost nothing extra. Dinner rolls made from scratch using leftover mashed potatoes became the soft, pillowy bread that absorbed gravy and made meals feel complete without buying expensive bakery items. Black mothers discovered that adding mashed potatoes to bread dough created rolls with incredible softness and moisture that stayed fresh for days, perfect for holiday meals where food needed to last. A single potato combined with flour, yeast, and minimal butter produced dozens of rolls that cost pennies compared to store-bought options. The dough was easy to work with, forgiving for inexperienced bakers, and could be shaped into various sizes depending on how many people needed feeding. Children loved pulling apart warm rolls to watch the steam escape, while adults appreciated how the potato rolls stayed soft even when served hours after baking. These rolls represented kitchen wisdom that turned leftovers and scraps into something families actively requested. Cranberry sauce made from whole berries and sugar water provided the traditional tart-sweet condiment without spending money on canned versions that cost 3 times more. Black mothers would buy fresh cranberries when they appeared seasonally in grocery stores, usually paying less than $1 for a pound that made enough sauce for 20 people. The berries were simmered with sugar and water until they burst and thickened into glossy, ruby-red sauce that tasted fresher and brighter than anything from cans. Some women added orange zest when citrus was affordable, while others kept it simple with just berries, sugar, and patience. The sauce could be made days ahead and actually improved with time as flavors melded, making it perfect for busy Thanksgiving preparations. Children loved the sweet tart flavor that contrasted with rich, savory dishes, while adults appreciated the burst of color and acidity that balanced heavy meals. Biscuits made fresh on Thanksgiving morning became the warm, buttery bread that mopped up gravy and made every bite more satisfying, prepared from basic ingredients that most kitchens already had. Black mothers mixed flour, baking powder, salt, and lard into simple dough that baked into flaky, tender biscuits, golden on top and soft inside. The key was handling the dough gently and not overworking it, lessons passed down from grandmothers who'd perfected biscuit making through decades of practice. A single batch using 5 pounds of flour produced enough biscuits to feed 20 people with leftovers for turkey sandwiches the next day. Some women brushed the tops with melted margarine for extra richness, while others kept them plain to let the flaky layers speak for themselves. Children would sneak biscuits while they cooled, unable to resist that combination of buttery exterior and steamy interior. Black-eyed peas cooked with onions and bacon fat carried both flavor and cultural significance, representing good fortune traditions that connected families to their Southern roots and African heritage. Black mothers prepared black-eyed peas for Thanksgiving as practice for New Year's Day when they'd serve them for luck, creating consistency in holiday cooking that children recognized and anticipated. The peas themselves cost less than beans, making them even more economical, and they cooked faster while still providing complete protein when served alongside cornbread or rice. Bacon fat, saved throughout the year, seasoned the peas with smoky richness, while onions added sweetness and depth that made even simple preparations taste complex. Some families added tomatoes or peppers when available, but the core remained peas, onions, and pork fat, simmered until tender. Children grew up associating black-eyed peas with celebration and family, understanding that these humble legumes carried meaning beyond mere nutrition. Rudabaga mashed with potatoes stretched expensive produce while adding nutrition and flavor complexity that plain mashed potatoes couldn't match, making economical side dishes feel more sophisticated. Rudabaga sold for pennies per pound since few shoppers knew how to prepare them, but Black mothers understood that these dense root vegetables could extend potato dishes while adding vitamins and slight sweetness. The rutabaga was peeled, cubed, and boiled alongside potatoes until both were tender, then mashed together with margarine and milk until smooth and creamy. The golden color was prettier than plain white potatoes, while the flavor had subtle sweetness and earthiness that made the dish more interesting. Children often couldn't tell they were eating rutabaga mixed in, accepting it as simply mashed potatoes without resistance. Adults appreciated how one rutabaga could replace half the potatoes needed, cutting costs significantly while actually improving the dish. Creamed corn made from canned corn and evaporated milk became the sweet, creamy side dish that children especially loved, prepared from affordable ingredients that most households kept in pantries. Black mothers would drain canned corn, then simmer it with evaporated milk, butter, or margarine, and a touch of sugar until it thickened into rich, creamy consistency. Some added a sprinkle of black pepper for contrast, while others kept it sweet and simple to please children who might reject more complex flavors. The evaporated milk created richness without requiring expensive heavy cream, making this dish accessible even to families on tight budgets. A single can of corn could be stretched to serve 8 people when prepared this way, and most families needed only 3 or 4 cans for Thanksgiving gatherings. The dish was make-ahead friendly, reheating beautifully without separating or losing its creamy texture. Deviled eggs made with extra mayonnaise and pickle juice stretched expensive eggs into appetizers that fed crowds while adding protein to meals that sometimes lacked adequate meat. Black mothers would hard-boil dozens of eggs when they went on sale, carefully peeling them and mixing the yolks with mayonnaise, mustard, pickle juice, and paprika until smooth and tangy. The pickle juice was key, adding flavor dimension while helping the filling stay moist and spreadable without requiring extra mayonnaise. Each egg half became a small, protein-rich bite that satisfied hunger while looking festive and deliberate on serving platters. Children loved deviled eggs because they were handheld and mild, while adults appreciated their versatility as appetizer, side dish, or even light main course when other food ran short. A dozen eggs could be transformed into 24 servings, making them remarkably economical for their protein content. The eggs could be prepared the day before Thanksgiving. Carrot and raisin salad made with minimal mayonnaise became the sweet, crunchy side dish that added color and nutrition without requiring cooking or expensive ingredients. Black mothers would buy carrots by the bag when on sale, shredding them by hand or with graters borrowed from neighbors, then mixing them with raisins that provided natural sweetness. The mayonnaise was used sparingly, just enough to coat everything, while lemon juice or vinegar added brightness. This cold salad was perfect for crowded refrigerators since it took up little space and actually tasted better after sitting overnight. Children loved the sweetness from raisins and the satisfying crunch of fresh carrots, making it one of the few vegetable dishes that didn't require cajoling. Adults appreciated its versatility, serving it as side dish, light dessert, or even breakfast the next morning. Carrot and raisin salad proved that simple combinations of affordable ingredients could create dishes that delighted across generations. Cornmeal rolls made when wheat flour ran short provided the golden, slightly sweet bread that soaked up gravy while stretching limited baking supplies into enough bread for everyone. Black mothers would combine cornmeal with whatever wheat flour remained, creating hybrid rolls that had distinctive texture and flavor, unlike purely wheat-based versions. The cornmeal added slight grittiness and natural sweetness that children found appealing, while the golden color made them look more special than plain white rolls. These rolls required less kneading than traditional bread, making them accessible to cooks with limited time or experience. A single batch using mostly cornmeal could feed 20 people, while using only a fraction of the expensive wheat flour that pure rolls would require. The rolls were best served warm when their texture was softest, though they also held up well for next-day turkey sandwiches. Baked sweet corn casserole made with creamed corn and cornbread mix became the dish that straddled the line between bread and vegetable, providing filling substance that satisfied children and adults. Black mothers would mix canned creamed corn with cornbread mix, eggs, and margarine, creating batter that baked into something between cornbread and corn pudding. The dish was sweet, moist, and substantial, feeling like comfort food rather than plain vegetables. It could be prepared in large pans that fed crowds, and it traveled well to church dinners and family gatherings without falling apart. Children who normally resisted vegetables would eat this because it tasted more like dessert than side dish, while adults valued its ability to fill hungry stomachs inexpensively. The casserole used ingredients that most households kept in pantries, making it possible to whip up even when fresh groceries were scarce. Corn casserole proved that creative combinations could turn basic staples into family traditions. Red rice cooked with tomato paste and sausage scraps became the colorful, flavorful dish that combined starch and protein in one economical pot that fed crowds with minimal effort. Black mothers would brown whatever sausage pieces were available, then cook rice directly in tomato paste thinned with water, creating dish with vibrant color and savory depth. The tomato paste was economical, costing less than fresh tomatoes while providing concentrated flavor that transformed plain rice into something special. Onions, peppers, and celery added when affordable, but the core remained rice, tomato paste, and whatever meat scraps could be found. This one-pot meal required minimal cleanup, crucial consideration when cooking for 20 people in small kitchens with limited hot water. The rice absorbed all the flavors as it cooked, creating cohesive dish where every bite tasted complete. Red rice represented Gullah and Low Country traditions that many black families carried with them during the Great Migration. Okra stewed with tomatoes became the southern side dish that provided both vegetables and sauce, stretching fresh produce into enough servings for large families without requiring meat. Black mothers would buy okra when it went on sale during late summer and fall, freezing what they couldn't use immediately for Thanksgiving preparations. The okra was sliced and cooked slowly with canned tomatoes, onions, and whatever seasonings the cabinet held, creating thick, flavorful stew. Some people loved okra's distinctive texture, while others needed convincing, but most agreed the tomato sauce made it more palatable. The dish was economical because okra was plentiful and cheap during season, while canned tomatoes cost less than fresh vegetables during winter months. This stew provided vitamins and fiber that balanced heavier, richer dishes on Thanksgiving tables, making it nutritionally important beyond mere economy. Okra and tomatoes represented the kind of practical cooking that sustained Black families. Buttermilk biscuits served with sorghum syrup became the dessert alternative when pies and cakes felt too expensive, turning breakfast bread into sweet treat that satisfied cravings. Black mothers would make extra biscuits specifically for serving with syrup after dinner, knowing that warm bread with sweet topping could substitute for fancy desserts. Sorghum syrup was cheaper than honey or maple syrup, providing dark, complex sweetness that paired beautifully with buttery biscuits. Children loved this simple dessert because they could eat with their hands, breaking open hot biscuits and drizzling syrup into every layer. Adults appreciated how leftover biscuits from dinner could be repurposed into dessert without additional cooking. This wasn't elegant or sophisticated, but it provided that sense of completion that dessert offered. Biscuits with syrup proved that satisfaction came from simplicity rather than complexity. Fried cabbage cooked with bacon ends became the vegetable side that tasted rich and satisfying despite costing almost nothing, transforming humble cruciferous vegetable into something people craved. Black mothers would shred cabbage from heads that cost less than 50 cents, then cook it slowly with bacon ends saved from breakfast preparations. The bacon fat and small meat pieces flavored the entire pot of cabbage, making it taste indulgent despite being mostly vegetable. Some women added onions for sweetness and complexity, while others kept it simple with just cabbage, bacon, and salt. The cabbage cooked down significantly, meaning one head could feed 8 to 10 people. Children who normally avoided vegetables would eat fried cabbage because it tasted bacony and rich. This dish represented the kind of flavor alchemy that Black cooks perfected through generations of making inexpensive ingredients taste expensive. Pound cake baked with margarine instead of butter became the golden, dense dessert that could be sliced thin to feed many people from a single loaf. Black mothers would cream margarine with sugar and eggs, adding flour gradually to create batter that baked into cake with tight crumb and rich flavor despite lacking expensive butter. The cake lasted for days when wrapped properly, actually improving in texture as it sat. A single pound cake could yield 24 thin slices when cut carefully, making it remarkably economical for providing dessert for large gatherings. Some women glazed their cakes with simple sugar icing, while others served them plain or with berries when fruit was affordable. Children loved pound cake because it was sweet without being overwhelming, while adults appreciated its versatility. Pound cake proved that basic ingredients could create impressive results. Dinner plates assembled strategically with small portions of many dishes created the visual abundance that made Thanksgiving feel special even when individual items were simple. Black mothers understood that perception mattered as much as reality, so they arranged plates with care to ensure everything looked generous. A tablespoon of each side dish, when presented attractively, made plates look full and varied despite containing less food than traditional servings. This wasn't deprivation, but intelligent portioning that ensured 20 people could eat from supplies that might normally serve 12. The variety itself provided satisfaction, as diners experienced multiple flavors even though amounts were modest. Children didn't notice smaller portions when their plates held 7 or 8 different items. Strategic plating represented the invisible labor that Black mothers performed to create holiday magic from limited means. Leftover turkey sandwiches planned from the beginning ensured that Thanksgiving dinner stretched into multiple meals, with mothers deliberately cooking extra, knowing that day-after sandwiches were part of the tradition. When families could afford turkey, Black mothers bought the smallest birds that would serve immediate needs while leaving enough for sandwiches. The leftover meat was sliced thin and layered on homemade biscuits or potato rolls with mayonnaise and cranberry sauce, creating sandwiches that tasted almost as good as the original meal. Children actually preferred these casual sandwiches to formal sit-down dinners, eating them while watching television. Adults appreciated how turkey sandwiches extended the Thanksgiving experience without requiring additional cooking. This planned-overs approach represented forward thinking that characterized Black household management during difficult times, ensuring maximum value. String beans canned in bulk and seasoned with bacon drippings provided the vegetable side that stretched pennies into portions for crowds, proving preserved vegetables could taste homemade. Black mothers bought cases of canned green beans when on sale, often paying less than 30 cents per can, then transformed them by draining the packing liquid and cooking them down with saved bacon grease. The bacon drippings, carefully stored from breakfast preparations throughout the year, added smoky richness that made even plain canned vegetables taste slow-cooked. Onions sautéed in the drippings first created a flavor base, then the drained beans went into simmer until they softened and absorbed all that porky goodness. Some women added a pinch of sugar to balance saltiness, while others threw in a ham hock if available. The beans weren't crisp tender but cooked until completely soft, the way older generations preferred vegetables. Children usually won over by these bacon-flavored beans. Creamed peas on toast was the quiet triumph of the thrifty kitchen, where love turned scarcity into satisfaction. When meat ran out, mothers reached for canned peas, butter, and a little flour to make magic happen. The butter melted into the pan, bubbling with the promise of warmth, and a spoonful of flour thickened it into a creamy roux. A splash of milk turned everything smooth and velvety, coating each green pea in a blanket of comfort. The toast, simple white bread browned on a pan or in the oven, waited like a canvas for the sauce to spill across it. The smell was gentle, buttery, and sweet, the kind that made a house feel like home. It was a meal made in minutes but remembered for years. Families sat together at small tables, passing plates with gratitude and quiet joy. It was humble, yes, but never empty. It fed both hunger and hope. Creamed peas on toast was more than a supper. It was a reminder that gentleness in cooking could make even the hardest days feel soft again. Okra and tomato stew was a dish where heritage met hunger and turned it into comfort. Born from African roots and southern soil, it blended the earthiness of okra with the tang of ripe tomatoes in a thick, bubbling pot. The slime that many feared became silk under the right hands, thickening the stew into a rich, flavorful broth. Onions, garlic, and a few peppers added depth, while a dash of salt or cayenne made the flavors sing. Families often served it over rice or ate it plain with a piece of cornbread, wiping the last drops from their plates. This dish wasn't just food. It was identity, a reflection of generations who made do and made magic. It connected farm to family, past to present, and hunger to heart. The smell alone carried memories of warm kitchens and laughter that refused to fade. Okra and tomato stew was a promise that no ingredient was too humble to become beautiful. It was the taste of tradition kept alive, no matter the hardship, and a reminder that every simmering pot held more than flavor. It held history. Cranberry sauce that made store-bought taste like colored water started with fresh cranberries Grandma bought in bulk. She'd rinse carefully, picking through to remove soft ones, then combine in a pot with sugar, orange juice, and the secret ingredient, a cinnamon stick and 3 cloves that infused warm spice without overwhelming cranberry tartness. The mixture simmered as berries began to pop and burst, releasing pectin that thickened sauce naturally. She'd stir occasionally, but not constantly because she wanted some berries whole for texture. After 15 minutes, when sauce coated the spoon and fell off in thick ribbons, she'd pull from heat and stir in orange zest using a microplane to grate just colored peel without bitter pith. The sauce went into a glass bowl to cool, thickening more as it cooled, reaching perfect consistency. The secret she never told? Adding a tablespoon of port wine at the end, giving depth and complexity that made people take seconds. Soot biscuits were the kind of food you learned to trust when the fire was all you had. They were baked in soot-covered Dutch ovens, set right into the coals until the smell of toasted flour filled the air. The outsides came out black and charred, but inside they were soft, warm and sweet from the faint taste of smoke. You brushed off the ash and split them open, steam rising like a small blessing. They were eaten with syrup, molasses, or even gravy if the morning allowed it. Families traveling, camping, or working the land knew this trick well. It was food that came straight from the earth and fire, raw and honest. Soot biscuits did not look like much, but they carried pride. They were proof that comfort could come from the simplest effort, that even ashes could feed the body and soothe the soul. The smell lingered on your hands and clothes, a reminder that good things sometimes came wrapped in smoke. Each bite tasted like work and gratitude, the flavor of survival baked in real flame. Cornbread and beans was the supper of survivors, the backbone of countless working families who knew how to turn little into plenty. The beans simmered low and slow, soaking up every bit of flavor from scraps of onion, bacon, or a precious ham bone saved from Sunday dinner. The longer they cooked, the richer they became, filling the home with a deep, savory scent that promised satisfaction. Cornbread baked nearby, its golden crust rising in the oven, the smell of butter and cornmeal mixing perfectly with the aroma of beans on the stove. When dinner was ready, families gathered close, crumbling the cornbread right into their bowls to soak up the thick broth. It wasn't just filling, it was fulfilling, warming both the body and the spirit. Some families added vinegar, others sprinkled sugar, but every household had its way of making it just right. Cornbread and beans told a story of endurance and community, of hard hands and full hearts. It wasn't luxury, it was life, steady and sustaining, passed from one generation to the next as a lesson in gratitude and grace. It reminded everyone that love, like good beans, only grows stronger the longer it's tended. Candied yams made with margarine instead of butter became the holiday staple that delivered sweetness without breaking the budget, transforming humble sweet potatoes into something luxurious. Black mothers would buy sweet potatoes in bulk when on sale, often 5 pounds for under $1, then slice them thick into baking dishes. Margarine, significantly cheaper than butter, was melted with brown sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg to create syrup that caramelized beautifully. Some added vanilla extract or orange juice when affordable, but the core remained simple. The yams baked slowly until softened, and the edges turned sticky with crystallized sugar, creating perfect balance between savory and sweet. Children fought over corner pieces where syrup had thickened into candy-like consistency, while adults appreciated how this dish required minimal ingredients yet delivered satisfaction. Candied yams represented the ability to create holiday magic from basic pantry staples. Okra fritters with corn silk were the kind of kitchen magic that only came from necessity and imagination. In the long summer months, when the fields were full and money was not, people used every part of what they harvested. The corn silk that clung to the ears was not thrown away, but saved and shredded, added into batter alongside chopped okra, flour, and a splash of milk or water. When dropped into hot oil, the fritters puffed and crackled, their edges turning golden and crisp. The smell was something you could follow from down the road. Warm, nutty, and sweet with that faint scent of corn. Each bite was crunchy on the outside and tender in the middle, with little strings of corn silk that gave it texture and charm. They were served with syrup or vinegar, depending on what the family had, eaten right out of the pan when patience ran out. Okra fritters with corn silk were food born from care and cleverness, proof that waste had no place in a humble kitchen. Every family had its own version, passed quietly between generations, carrying the taste of late afternoons, hard work, and simple joy. They were poverty's poetry, fried into something worth remembering. Giblet gravy that people fought over started with giblets most families threw away, but Grandma knew held the secret to deep, rich flavor. She'd simmer the turkey neck, heart, and gizzard in water with onions, celery, and bay leaves for hours, creating stock so flavorful it could stand alone as soup. When the turkey came out, she'd pour off drippings from the roasting pan, letting fat rise to the top so she could skim most while keeping precious brown bits stuck to the bottom. She'd make a roux in the same pan with turkey fat and flour, scraping up all those caramelized bits, then slowly whisk in the giblet stock until it turned silky. The giblets got chopped fine and stirred back in, adding texture and depth. The secret ingredient? A splash of dry sherry added right at the end, giving gravy complexity people couldn't quite identify. This gravy was labor-intensive, requiring constant attention and perfect timing, but it turned plain turkey into something transcendent. Sorrel leaf stew was the taste of home for generations who carried their roots wherever life took them. The wild green leaves, bright and tangy, grew freely along fences and fields, waiting for careful hands to gather them. Washed and simmered with onions, garlic, and a little oil, they softened into a dark green broth that shimmered in the pot. Sometimes salted pork or dried fish bones were added for depth, but even without them, the stew stood proud. Its flavor was sharp and earthy, sour and comforting all at once. For families from the coastal South and Caribbean, this dish was not just food. It was a memory of sunlight, laughter, and work well done. It was a taste of mothers stirring pots over open fires, of children running barefoot through red dirt yards. Sorrel leaf stew reminded everyone that strength grew from soil and struggle, that flavor could come from the simplest gift of the land. When a spoon dipped into that steaming bowl, it carried the sound of old prayers and soft voices calling people to eat. In every swallow lived the rhythm of survival, steady and sure, like the ocean tides that shaped those who first made it. Cabbage and sausage skillet was the kind of dinner that turned struggle into satisfaction. A single head of cabbage, cheap and sturdy, could feed a whole family when paired with a few slices of sausage or hot dogs. Grandmothers fried the sausage first, letting the grease flavor the pan, then tossed in ribbons of cabbage that sizzled and softened. The sound of it frying was enough to make mouths water, a tune of thrift and triumph. The smell filled the house, smoky, savory, and sweet all at once. Potatoes or onions sometimes joined the mix, stretching it further while adding depth. Served hot from the skillet, it was hearty and humble, with each bite carrying flavor far greater than its cost. This meal didn't come from plenty, it came from wisdom, from knowing how to make something out of nearly nothing. Families ate together, full and grateful, proving that good food didn't need much, only love, heat, and a little time. Chitlin dressing appeared on tables when traditional stuffing felt too expensive, turning what others discarded into something deeply satisfying. Cleaned thoroughly over hours, chitlins were chopped fine and mixed with cornbread crumbles, celery, onions, sage, and chicken broth stretched as far as possible. The mixture baked until golden on top while staying moist inside, creating dressing that carried intense flavor and connected families to ancestral cooking traditions. Black mothers prepared chitlins as acts of both economy and heritage, knowing their grandmothers had done the same during harder times. The smell was unmistakable, but for those raised with it, chitlin dressing meant Thanksgiving in ways plain bread stuffing never could. A single batch cost less than $3, yet fed the entire gathering. Young people might have initially resisted, but after that first bite, most came back for seconds. Chitlin dressing taught lessons about respecting traditions. Fried cabbage with bacon grease was the meal you made when the pantry looked bare, but your will stayed strong. A head of cabbage, a bit of onion, and a spoonful of saved bacon grease could stretch into supper for an entire family. The crackle of the skillet filled the kitchen like music, turning simple leaves into something rich and smoky. This dish carried the scent of thrift and memory, the kind that lingered long after the plates were empty. The secret was balance, enough fat for flavor, enough salt for soul, and enough patience to let it caramelize just right. Cabbage may have been cheap, but it was treated like gold by those who knew its worth. Served hot with a piece of cornbread or rice, it became proof that a meal didn't have to be fancy to feel like a blessing. Fried cabbage with bacon grease was more than sustenance. It was pride in a pan. Each bite told a story of survival, of turning scarcity into satisfaction. It was the art of making the ordinary taste extraordinary, one skillet at a time. Pecan pie with filling that stayed perfectly set instead of runny required understanding ratios Grandma had memorized decades ago. She'd make her own crust using lard because lard created flakier layers that shattered when bitten. The crust got blind baked 10 minutes, lined with foil and filled with dried beans. The filling was precise balance of dark corn syrup, eggs, brown sugar, vanilla, and melted butter, whisked smooth. Pecans got toasted in a dry skillet 5 minutes, intensifying buttery flavor before being arranged in the crust. The secret that separated Grandma's pie? She'd add a tablespoon of bourbon and a teaspoon of espresso powder to filling, neither enough to taste directly, but both adding depth that made pie taste more intensely of itself. The pie baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes, tested by jiggling the pan, looking for center to have slight wobble while edges were firm. Overbaking made filling crack and become grainy. Which cheap Thanksgiving dinner from the 1970s would you bring back? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more stories of resourcefulness, love, and the flavors that fed families against all odds.